Hello and welcome to the latest edition of On the Whistle. I was going to introduce it with the score, but my head's so all over the place this morning that I actually couldn't remember what the score was. 1-1 on the night, 3-2 at Sunderland aggregate. I can't vouch for what the quality of this video is going to be in terms of the analysis, because just really a game that I don't even know where to start, really. A game and a night, one of the most incredible moments I've ever seen and been witness to. An absolute privilege to be there, but I guess a moment so incredible from a Sunderland perspective, chiefly because you, for so much of the night, kind of lost hope that it was coming. As ever, I'm going to get into your questions and comments in a little bit, and I'm just going to talk through what I thought of the night, which, as I say, might be a little bit all over the place. My throat seems a little bit croaky as well, so we'll see how we go here. I think the thing that I would start by saying is, like, it was just an absolute privilege and just incredible to be in Sunderland last night. I thought that I've never really seen scenes like there were before the game, and not just in terms of people coming out to line the streets for the coach. The smell of the flares, the noise of the singing, the anticipation in the air. It was really special scenes that, to be, will stay with me. I'll remember this game forever, and chiefly because of just how unbelievably good it felt to be in the city, to be in our city, all together like that. And I thought it was particularly special because obviously the season for the most part had been so good, and then the last couple of months had been, pretty much since the Leeds game, I think, had been so difficult for the players, for the staff, for the fans, and the way that someone turned it around. They were so focused going into that game at Coventry. The game plan wasn't pretty, but it was spot on. The humility that someone showed in that game, the commitment they showed, it was almost like they just completely lit a fire under the city again. And after that kind of long period where I think everyone sort of switched off a little bit, maybe from the football, and reasonably so, because there was just so little in the games, it's almost like the whole thing just stirred again, and it all came to a head with those incredible scenes in the city for the few hours before the game. The tifo, the atmosphere, the wise men say, which is the loudest I have ever heard it in the stadium right before kickoff. It was just absolutely spine-tingling stuff. And I think sometimes we can fall a little bit into the habit, and I would be the same as a journalist who covers Sunderland. We can fall into the habit a little bit of, because of the journey we've been on, because it's been quite long, quite painful over the last sort of 10 years, really. And because, Sunderland aren't a club that have the wealth that you see in some areas of the game now, I think you can sort of almost forget just how big this club is, how incredible it can be, how powerful a force it can be. And that was something that just sort of came back to me at kickoff last night. That, this is a championship playoff semi-final, and this is an atmosphere that would rival anything anywhere in the world. It was just so special. And then the game starts, and just all that excitement and that belief and just sort of slowly ebbs away a little bit. And the first half was a strange one, because I actually thought that large parts of what Sunderland did in the first half were okay, in terms of, I actually thought that they went with this sort of counter-attacking game plan again, quite direct, which was risky. I thought in the first half the space and the opportunities to break were actually there, but the execution wasn't quite right. The first half, I thought that Coventry, by the end, was certainly on top, and that was really worrying. And obviously your hope is that at half-time, Sunderland will have the time and space they need to make the tweaks to get Sunderland going again. And actually went the other way, whereas I thought the second half, I felt like Sunderland kind of froze, to be honest. I thought that, we were speaking to Lebris after the game, and he was really candid, as he always is. He always gives you a really honest perspective on the game. And he said that he did feel that Sunderland, A, they were nervous, but B, they were caught between two attitudes in terms of, do we protect or do we try and win the game? And actually, I think you could see that, because especially during the first sort of hour, I was getting quite frustrated with Meander and Isidore, because obviously a lot of those counter-attacks were breaking down. But I think actually having a little bit of time to dwell on it, I'm a lot more sympathetic with them, because I thought Sunderland, when you think about it, they weren't really committing to their strategy. So even when they were breaking, I felt that they were so nervous about leaving space in behind for Coventry to then break, because of the pace of Mason Clark, if Hadji Wright on the break. They weren't fully committing to the counter-attack, so they weren't really doing anything. They weren't defending in a really, really low block and completely denying Coventry any space. And they weren't also like fully committing to the counter-attack. And I just felt you could feel the nerves go into the game. And although Anthony Patterson didn't have loads to do, I think that when the cross came in and Mason Clark scored, it felt like a fair reflection of the game. And to be honest, at that point, I could only see one winner. And if we're brutally honest, I think that when that cross comes in the 90th minute and Hadji Wright has a free header from 5-6 yards out, if he heads that in, I think Coventry go away deserved winners, 2-0, an excellent performance. I've got to say, I've got to give a lot of credit, in my view anyway, to Frank Lampard and his coaching staff. I think that they are a really good team. I think that Matt Grimes was an excellent signing in January. He's a really, really good player. I thought the way that in that atmosphere, yes, okay, Sunderland were nervous and they didn't quite know how to approach it. But I thought the way that Coventry controlled the ball, the way they attacked without being too reckless, the poise they had not to commit too many bodies forward and to leave too much space for Sunderland. They got a really impressive balance in a white hot atmosphere, and I've got a lot of respect for their performance. And I think if Wright heads that in, they go away deserved winners. Even the first 1 or 2 minutes of extra time, Coventry are piling the pressure on, and at that point, I've got to be honest, I'm thinking, this is a game that is going to haunt Sunderland for an age. It's going to haunt the players, the staff, and especially the supporters, because especially with the history with Coventry, the position that Sunderland have got themselves into by producing such a special performance in the first leg, albeit a very backs to the wall one, an almost old-fashioned Mourinho-esque performance. I thought this really is going to be a night that haunts this club, because they put themselves in such a strong position and then they'd frozen. That was my feeling, that, they just didn't have the confidence and the intensity to really believe in themselves and go win the game. I thought the game changed. 2 little turning points. I thought that I have to give a real shout out to Chris Rigg, because I think in both games he's come on and made a contribution. Even more impressive last night because Sunderland were performing so poorly in that moment. I think for a player of his age, he's essentially been dropped after a brilliant season for the 2 biggest games of his life so far. I think to just park that frustration, to be clearly so connected with his teammates, and to come on and help change the game in both circumstances, I think is an absolute credit to his mentality. And I think that more than the technical ability is what makes me think we're talking about a player who'll go at the very top here. I thought that for getting Rigg on the pitch helped a little bit change the pattern of the game. And I think the game changer was the introduction of Romain Mundle. Now, no surprise there, because if we think about Sunderland at their best this season, Romain Mundle's been at the heart of it. I thought that there was 2 aspects to it. Sunderland looked so much more fluid because Lefebvre came into the middle. All of a sudden, Neil was dropping a little bit deeper and getting on the ball. That seemed to calm him down. The fact that he was getting in front of the centre-half allowed Joe Bellingham to get into the game and play a lot more like we see it. Immediately, you saw that trio of Sirkin, Bellingham, Mundle. The connection is so smooth. It's almost become instinctive because of the time they spent together at the start of the season. And I thought that it calmed Sunderland down, but I think crucially, it pushed Coventry back. Now, in some ways, I feel a bit sorry for Milan Van Uwijk, because obviously his pass from Mayenda in the first goal is going to be what kind of people remember about his performance in these playoff semi-final legs. But he is one hell of an attacking fullback for this level. And if you think about it, so much of Coventry's threat was when he got to the byline. But for the first time, probably in the game, he was actually having to think about defending. And I thought Mundle's sort of introduction was a turning point in the game. I thought Sunderland played well in extra time. I give them a huge amount of sort of credit and respect for the fact that, even though Dan Ballard said, he felt it like we did, he said in his interview after the game, that it just felt like it wasn't going to be Sunderland's night. I do think they looked like the team we know they can be in extra time. And I don't think Coventry were in any way dominant in extra time. I completely understand Frank Lampard's sentiment when he said after the game that, he was really proud over the control they had over the 2 legs and felt they deserved more. I can certainly see that from his point of view. But I thought extra time Sunderland were in the ascendancy. But obviously it felt like the moment had gone. We were about to go into the 120th minute and Coventry City had a corner. We've seen how dangerous they can be from set plays, and it felt like at that moment, obviously, if there was going to be, it was either going to be penalties or a Coventry winner. Fantastic move for Sunderland to win the corner. Trey Hume, really good ball to the back post. I I don't know about all you watching and listening, but the next 5 minutes is just a complete blur for me. I loved watching the footage back this morning. Obviously, the little details you don't get to see at the time, when Enzo Lefebvre comes over to the corner and he G's the Sunderland crowd up a little bit, and then he takes a deep breath. You know, my head at the time was in penalties. Who's going to take a penalty? But, you know, the big game players understand their moments, don't they? And Lefebvre obviously understood the opportunity was there. He was still thinking about winning this game. Fantastic delivery. And then Dan Ballard, kind of defying physics, really. I mean, he admitted in his interview after the game that because of Romain Mundle, he didn't see the ball until late and he jumped too early. He's not in any position really to head the ball, which just makes the fact that his effort was so precise all the more remarkable. It was just one of the most incredible moments I've ever seen at Sydney. Actually, probably the most incredible moment I've ever seen at the Stadium of Light. And maybe it says something about how long I've been sort of covering and following Sunderland, because the celebrations going on, I'm thinking there's still going to be 30 seconds to play here. Come on, focus. You're still going to have to do some defending immediately. My mind went to that kind of panic stations. And I couldn't believe it when the referee blew up straight away. I thought, oh, we're going to have another corner. We're going to have another ball into the box. Come on, Sunderland, you need to focus. But the referee blowing up straight away was just a feeling of quite incredible relief. So I'm not sure that's the best tactical analysis you'll have ever listened to in your life, but it didn't really feel like a night for that. I think the one thing that it went to show, I thought there was a great quote from Lebris. I'm actually going to see if I can find it here, because I think you'll enjoy it. I think it sums it up. Yeah, it's really important to highlight the togetherness of these players. They're not always brilliant with the ball, but they represent the club and the region. They fight all the way, even when it's tough. They are so well connected. And I think that's true. I think there's so many holes you could pick in someone's performance last night. In some ways, you know, the attack and play we've known for a while hasn't been where it needs to be in a lot of aspects of the games. But, you know, there is a real togetherness about this group. You know, I think they really are a team of warriors. And Lebris has to take a little credit to that, because he was ruthless in pre-season in focusing on a core of players who he believed were really connected with what he wanted to do. And he's getting his rewards from that. And yeah, it wasn't a vintage performance by any means, but I think the mentality of the team is really, really strong, and that's ultimately why they've come through what was a pretty punishing 2 legs. Yeah, let's have a look at your questions and comments. Let's see what you're saying. So I'm going to start with Andy Apple 5, who says, who wears red and white for the final? Is it automatically Sheffield United as they finished 3rd? I believe so, Andy. I believe Sunderland will be in their away kit because they finished lower in the table. Don't take that as gospel, Andy. I will double check and I will give you a shout on Blue Sky if it turns out that that's not actually the case. But I think that is right. Okay, so a few of you asking something around a similar question, so I'll chuck them in together. Jonesy says, do Sunderland start Mundle in the final? He instantly made Coventry sit back and give us so much more balance. He defended like a champ as well. Andy says, what a night, on to Wembley. 4-4-2 worked very well against Sheffield on New Year's Day, likewise in the first leg at Coventry, but we got overrun and lost control of midfield in that formation tonight. What's your hunch in how we'll set up? Yeah, really good question. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Sorry, I know it's annoying, but I'm hoping today of all days you'll sympathise with me, because I've had about 3 hours sleep. On the basis of what we saw last night, if Mundle's fit, I think he has to start. I think the balance of the side, the ability to control the game that having Enzo Lefebvre in the middle of the pitch gives you, for me, it's the best team Sunderland can put out has Mundle on the left wing. And the best team Sunderland can put out is in a 4-3-3. And I think, for me, we saw that in extra time. I think 4-4-2 has its real advantages, as you mentioned, Andy, there. I think Isidore Mienda's pace on the break can be fantastic. For me, that's something you turn to at the end of the game if you need it in a game like this. My personal feeling is that Sunderland should go with a formation that served them so well over the course of the season. Try and get on the ball. I think Sheffield United will dominate possession, and I think Sunderland will have to suffer again. I think that's pretty obvious. You look at the talent Sheffield United have, bolstered by parachute payments. I think Sunderland are going to have to be pretty humble in how they approach the game again. But I think that they'll want a little bit more control, as you mentioned, Andy, than they did last night. And I think the 3 in the middle is the way to do that. For me, Jonesy, in your point, he starts for me if he's fit, but that's the question mark. And obviously the danger from a Sunderland perspective is that if you start and he can't play 90 minutes or he can't play 120 minutes, you then potentially lose one of your most dynamic attacking players at a crucial point in the game. So that's the risk. But the other thing I would say is the whole point of the way that Lebris has sort of managed Tommy Watson since the Brighton move was announced was so that you could use him for 15, 20 minutes in a playoff final if you needed him. That's what it's been all about. And so my feeling is that Mundell has to start, because I thought last night he was an absolute game changer. And I'm pleased you've mentioned Jonesy about his defensive work, because it's not just about what he does going forward. I think he is such a brilliant winger. I think Enzo Lefebvre deserves a lot of credit, because ultimately out of position in a game that didn't really suit him at all, he's delivered 2 assists. I think that tells you all about his quality, that he's found those moments. But I think you saw the benefits of having a proper left winger in the way that Sunderland play, especially with a counter-attacking style. So there we go, that's my thoughts on that. Neil says, best ever night of the SOL, Phil. Ballard with 2 sensational performances. I mean, really iconic stuff. Really, really iconic stuff. I think even if Sunderland got out, I'd be talking about one of the best individual performances that I can ever remember. Certainly, especially because it was across 2 legs, and then to go and head it in off the bar. Really iconic stuff. To be honest, my feeling this season has been that if Sunderland don't get promoted, Ballard might stay another season, because he hasn't played enough football this year, and maybe his injuries would put Premier League teams off. I think there'll be Premier League teams watching what's happened over the last 2 legs wanting to sign Dan Ballard, and I'm increasingly of the view that someone might have to win at Wembley to keep him. If he plays like he did the last couple of nights, then they're going to have every chance. Sorry, Neil, I'll get your question now. Got distracted there. Is there a question mark over whether Roberts plays in the final? Poor performance from him tonight. Yeah, Neil, I mean, there's no 2 ways about it, is it? It's not the Roberts we know and love last night. The one thing I would say in mitigation to that, Neil, is one, as I mentioned, Roberts is never going to be as effective when he's so isolated, picks up the ball so deep, and the opposition can get 3 players on him straight away. I kind of want to be a little bit sympathetic to him in that. The other thing I would say is that I thought he was excellent on Friday night. I thought he carried the ball well, he offered a bit of a threat, and he defensively was absolutely superb in terms of the protection he offered Trey Hume, who obviously on Friday night was playing up against Hadji Wright. I wonder just how much fatigue was a factor. It looked to me like he was putting so much effort in supporting his fullback that when he got the ball, he just didn't seem to have that much in the tank. My feeling is that you trust the core of your team, you trust the players who've brought you all this way. So my feeling is that Roberts deserves to start. He'll have had a sort of 10-day break before that final. I'd be reluctant to sort of leave Roberts out. The one thing that I would say, Neil, is one of the things we've talked about this season is obviously there's not really been an alternative on the right. I do think that's been a major recruitment issue in terms of Jan Paveda not working. I think that's had a big impact on Sunderland's season. We saw last night that Rigg is an option. He played so well out there in the latter stages. And so I'm sure it's something that Lebris will be thinking about in terms of the balance of the side, Neil. But for me, I'm going to not give Roberts a pass for last night, but I'm going to say that I think the defensive work that he had to do because of Sunderland's game plan really took away from what we know he can do. But yeah, it's certainly a fair point. I think that's all your questions. So there we go. We'll leave it there. That's 19 minutes. Sorry if that's all being a little bit chaotic. Still a little bit dazed by what I've seen. Just an amazing night to be. It felt like a real celebration, not just as Sunderland football club, but of Sunderland the city as well, and the passion in the community that we have in this fantastic city was really on full show, and a moment that we'll all be talking about for generations and generations. Just an absolute privilege to be there. Let's hope we can, someone can go and do the job now at Wembley. But thanks so much for your questions and comments. Thanks so much to everyone who's watched this. There'll be so much stuff I don't need to tell you on the Sunderland Echo website and on this YouTube channel, both before and after Wembley. So just, keep your eyes out for all the content. Thanks again for watching.